Populations and samples. When we use the term population in statistics, we mean the whole set of items that are of interest for the investigation we are doing. This could be the population of the world, by that I mean the human population of the world, the students in your class, the set of marbles in a bag, or indeed any other set of objects. We can collect data, observations or measurements from the individuals in a population. Collecting information from every member of a population is known as a census. The individual members of a population are known as sampling units. So if we're talking about the students in your class, the sampling units would be the individual students. Sampling units are usually labelled in some way, such as being named or numbered. A list, which could be real or virtual, of sampling units is known as a sampling frame. So for your class, the register might be the sampling frame. If we gather the information from a subset of the population rather than the whole population, this subset is known as a sample. The idea in statistics is to infer things about the population from a sample. For example, deciding which way the country is going to vote based on a sample of people that you ask the question. So what are the pros and cons for each? So let's look at census and sample and some advantages and disadvantages. With a census, it should provide a completely accurate result. This does come with the caveat that the collection of large amounts of data and the time taken to process may mean that things have changed between the conducting of the survey and the production of the results of the survey. And here's one of the disadvantages. It's really linked to this. They can be time consuming and, of course, in addition to that, expensive. And they can't be used in situations where we need to test to destruction, for example, light bulbs. Large amounts of data to process, we've already mentioned that. With a sample, however, it's less time consuming and, in consequence of that, less expensive. There's less data to process, so we can get the results more quickly. The results may be less accurate or representative of the population. Natural variation or poor sampling may lead to bias, and we'll talk more about bias later. Small subgroups may be insufficiently represented. Depending on the size of the sample that you're taking, there may be portions of a population that don't end up in the sample at all. We will be talking about different types of samples in the next lesson. The type of sample chosen and the size of the sample need to be carefully considered in different situations. We may not have much control over sample size. It depends on the situation we're working in. Larger samples are likely to be more representative. This is in some sense a no-brainer because a larger sample is closer to a census. But of course, it does also bring in that the larger the sample, the more time-consuming and more expensive. Larger samples are desirable when the population is more varied. And we mentioned that here. We don't want certain subgroups to be unrepresented in our samples.